Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Journey podcast. I'm so excited today because we have the incredible Lindsay Peoples here today. She is the editor in chief of The Cut, Defying All of the Odds. She was one of the youngest, actually, the youngest editor in chief at Condé Nast when she was previously Teen Vogue's editor in chief. More importantly, I think Lindsay is someone who has had a very consistent work ethic and incredible taste, and someone in a sea of people who are just duplicating one another in a little like giant echo chamber. I think someone who is a leader of conversations and trends. And for me, one of the things that I've really admired from afar, we don't know each other, you guys, so you're going to hear us get to know each other a little bit better. So we've literally never met, which is chaos. That's probably more my fault than hers because I don't go anywhere. But like one of the things that I've admired is that so much so, I think media has had a really challenging time. Like a lot of people don't trust the media. A lot of people don't trust the news. There is constant dialogue about what are facts and what are truth, particularly because of how the political climate has like some ex-president, has like basically said things that makes people doubt like, oh, what is fact? So in that world where publications are literally fighting for their lives, the Cut has defied the odds and I think been a very consistent place, regardless of political party, I would argue, of truth for so many women specifically, but also just people who care about pop culture trends and being a part of the conversation. And every time I see the Cut's pieces come out, one, you could like take away the brand name and I could tell you that it was the Cut, which is very rare as well.
That makes me happy. Yeah.
That's how I feel because it feels very consistent, which again is not easy to do when I'm in a very tough business where margins can be challenging, and investing the time and energy required for that level of creativity and that level of branding is not something we should be taking for granted. And I say that owning a media company, I don't think that people really understand what happens behind the scenes. So anyways, I'm really excited to have you here today. Welcome.
I'm equally as excited.
Hey everyone, I'm Morgan Debaun, a passionate entrepreneur and life advisor. With the Journey podcast, you'll discover that success isn't about the destination, it's about the journey. I'm sharing stories of amazing people who've taken control of their lives. Join me on my own journey to discover the secret sauce behind reaching success with permission from no one else. So you just got back from Europe from literally Fashion Month. We had Nikki on the show a few weeks ago for the people listening, last week for me. And so we talked a lot in that episode about like the business of fashion. And I was really curious from your perspective, even just in this last like year or two, how you've seen the fashion industry change or shift at all, if at all.
I don't actually think it's shifted that much. I think that fashion is continuously one of these industries that just has no boundaries as far as like how creative and how transformative it can be. I think that a lot of times people believe it to be a very frivolous idea and industry. And I think in some ways it can be, right? Like I think that fashion people sometimes can be incredibly unserious. And I remind myself of that all the time, and very in their own heads and not in thinking of what is going on in the world and how that plays into what we are also participating in and what messages we're kind of passing down to trickle in to filter into other places. But at the same time, it is like very much run by the same people. It is very old school. It is very set in its ways and not nearly as progressive as I think that people believe it to be. And so a lot of times I think that it takes much longer to actually see formidable change. I think an easy one that I think of that I've been reporting on forever was always size inclusivity.
Yes.
And I remember like being one of the only reporters that would write about it, that would like go to, there's all, obviously we have like your big fashion month that's for women's at least, is during February and September. But I remember going to all of the smaller like trade shows or like plus size fashion week or Curvy Con and all those other things. And a lot of the other magazines being like, we're not reporting on that. We're not going there. We're not sending a writer there. But also that was such a big part of the stories of fashion, I would say in the past, at least, 5 to 10 years of like, seeing Precious and Ashley and Paloma and all these people. And now you rarely see a lot of size inclusive models on the runway. So I don't actually think that we've made as much change as people want to say.
I don't think so either. And I actually think that's kind of consistent across the board. I mean, even from like a startup founder venture back perspective, like the numbers were trending up, and then actually George Floyd and stuff happened, and so they like spiked, and now they've retreated even prior to the numbers before George Floyd. And I think it's because people were kind of like trending to do the right thing because it was also good for business and it was good for
Mhm.
consumers and it was good for like, it is better business to have a wider target audience, or to be finding startups in my case where people weren't finding startups. And then I think people felt like they got bullied, and by people I mean white people felt like they got bullied, the powers that be, into like caring when they actually didn't give
Yeah.
a shit. And now they're like, oh, nobody cares, I'm taking it all
Yeah,
back.
we don't have to care. Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I mean, I think so many of the motivations were obviously not rooted in authentic desire to make change. And
Yeah,
so much of what hasn't changed is the infrastructure of fashion. So
right.
things are the same.
The power is the power that
Yeah.
be. And how much in the fashion industry do you think the power is like genuinely centralized amongst, like, if you were to be able to list, like, I'm not going to ask you to list it, but if you
Yeah.
were to list like the things, do you think that it's really centralized in a
Yeah,
clear way? Yeah.
it is 100%.
What happens when those people die? Because they're like kind of all old. What's going to happen next?
Honestly, no, I think that a lot of it is centralized, but I also think that so much of this plays into generational wealth, which you've talked a ton about. I try to talk a lot about when young people ask me about starting out in the industry because it is so hard to get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
And it still is. Like, I think that, now there's so many companies that don't have internship programs or fellowship programs.
Uh-huh.
It's incredibly expensive to live here in New York. I don't even know why. It's insane. But if you want to work in magazines, you're usually here or maybe LA, but like you're mainly here in New York.
Hmm.
And I do think that a lot of it is that you really have to, the same doors are the same doors.
They are
I
the
don't,
same doors. I feel the same way. It hasn't really changed. So let's transition a little bit. Actually, one thing that I just happened a couple weeks ago that I had this in my mental note to ask you about. I'm pulling together a panel with Brandis from Harlem Fashion Row
yeah,
for
yeah,
AfroTech, which I'm so
love.
excited about. And so I reached out to a bunch of Black designers, like some of the top ones for all intents and purposes. And someone confidentially wrote me back. I'm not going to say who it was, but they said, actually our business is struggling, so like we actually can't even afford to like come to
Yeah,
Afrotech, and we were going to pay for their flight and hotel and like even a
yeah, yeah.
baseline honorarium. And they were like, no, like our business is struggling so much. And in my head I'm like, your business is struggling? Like you are so and so and so and so, like
Mhm.
you're in like Nordstrom, like white people wear your stuff, like what are we talking about? Like you should be fine.
No, yeah, you'd be surprised. I hear that every day.
Yeah, I'm like, what's going on? Have they always been struggling and it's just like we now can just see the content more so it looks like everybody's doing well, or like what do you think it is?
Multiple things. So we've been doing Black in Fashion Council that I run with my co-founder Sandrine Charles. We started basically the idea came about when I worked at the Cut many years ago the first time, and I did this piece interviewing hundreds of Black people talking about like what everyone feels about their place in fashion, and the article was called like what it's like to be Black and in fashion. And I think that a lot of that still feels true today, which makes me
Yeah.
incredibly sad. And we basically ended up getting on a Zoom with hundreds of people that were part of that piece during pandemic and talking about like, okay, so we all feel this way. And this is genuinely how we all feel. And we're very frustrated. What do we do with the power that we do have? And I remember just being like, I don't have as much resources as other people. I don't have as much money. I'm too young, like listing out all these reasons why I felt like I wasn't qualified to really help people in a bigger way. I remember talking with Beth Ann Hardison about it, and she was like, look, you got to do this. Figure it
Mhm.
out. And her exact quote was that, like, she was like, look, everybody starts a foundation to try to cure cancer. Nobody says don't start a foundation. Like, everybody does it because you need to find a cure. And you're going to have your own way of doing this. It's going to be different than other people. But, like, if you can help 4 Black designers, that's good enough. And I mean, we've done a lot of different things of job fairs and, fellowship opportunities and trying to just help. We'll get emails from big brands being like, hey, we're looking for a creative director, and we'll send them names. Like,
Right.
anything that we can do, we will do. And I'm not taking a salary for this. Like, I have a
Yeah, it's a
real big job. I'm just
social
doing it
impact.
genuinely to help. But one of the things that we've done consistently is the showroom in February, September. And when I tell you that, like, a lot of it is, it just takes so much money production wise to make a brand
Mm,
consistently. B, they need a lot of guidance as a designer in general, whether you're Black or white or whatever. You need a lot of guidance as far as the curation of your brand, of how you're actually putting together the PDF, your mission statement, who's
mm,
your target audience, the pricing, like all of those things
mhm.
you get when you're part of an LVMH or when you're part of a big house. You get all of that guidance of what the brand
Right.
is and the ethos and how you're going to market it and where you're going to sell and all of that. And so a lot of times we get a ton of brands emailing and saying we want to be part of the showroom. I'm more so on the curating of what brands are in the showroom. And so it is really difficult to find that kind of support that doesn't just fall off after one season.
Right.
You need a lot of money. You need a lot of press. We don't charge designers or have them other than just like show up and we can kind of help. And they set up for the week and we set them up with some appointments with editors and buyers and different stakeholders. But it is difficult because even with that, it's like we're only doing that twice a year. And so they need to be in front of these people and having
Constantly.
the conversations constantly throughout the year. And when I tell you every single time we do the showroom and designers say, I don't hear from so and so until it's Black History Month
Ouch.
consistently.
Do you think there's anyone who's broken through the wall? Like, do you think there's any Black
Yeah.
designers that have
Yeah.
with their own, not just creative directors of other
I think
houses?
I think it takes a while, but yeah, I do think that it takes a while, and it also takes a lot of, I think, strategy of who's wearing the brand, but then also those people need to be buying. You can't just be
They
loaning to
actually need to
people.
go and
They
buy.
have to be buying. Like I think a lot of people assume, oh, I saw this celebrity wearing it. It's like they could be spending all of their money dressing the celebrity, and they're hoping that they're getting some impressions from it. But if they don't actually get sales, it doesn't actually matter.
Yeah. So for people who are just like everyday people, everyday millionaires, doing their thing, I'm being aspirational for you guys, everyday millionaires listening in. What should they be doing differently? Like how could their spend help more Black designers?
I mean, I think very easily buying direct from the brand is always the thing because the money actually goes to them. So I think that that is always the case. You may have like a gala that you have to go to, right? And so like it's for convenience purposes, it's obviously easy to like purchase from a Nordstrom retailer, et cetera, go there and get something. It does take more planning and time to email a Black designer and say, hey, I have this gala in a month, this is my size, would you have anything that I can purchase, etc. But obviously it is worth it. I love supporting Black designers as much as I can. I just wore Diotima to Business and Fashion Gala in
Mhm.
Paris. Like it does take more effort because they're not sold as many places. It's not as easy to purchase.
Yeah.
But it's obviously important and you just have to be more intentional with your spending, which is the truth for most Black brands, whether it's fashion or anything.
I don't think many people would like ever consider for the average person to email or DM a designer. Like, I don't know that that's like a train of not at all, Lindsay. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think I've had designers reach out to me and say like, hey, I would love to like gift you this. You have Afrojack coming up. Like, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, absolutely. But I personally have never been like, hey,
No,
Sergio, what's
I mean,
up?
you could be a private client though. It's not like you're saying, "Oh, I need to spend." I'm not even saying that you would be spending thousands of dollars. Like I
It's no different than me buying my ALC,
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just don't think that it's something that is a part of our normal culture of buying. And so
Yeah.
I don't know that that's something that people like. I've never even thought of like, oh, let me just like reach out to the designer and say, hey, do you have anything in my
Yeah.
size? If not, like something's coming up. Can we work on something?
Totally. I mean, Hanifa is great for that. Diotima,
Yeah.
Theophilio, Christopher John Rogers. I can go down the list. Yeah.
No, you don't have to. Or we'll put the list. They're in your council. That's the beauty of it all. Okay, so super interesting. Switching gears a little bit to you as a person, your life looks so glamorous. I mean, just like, yes, it does. It looks glamorous to
It's not.
me.
It's not.
So tell me, what are the things that you do that you're like, I'm obsessed with this and I love this part of my life? I wake up every day and I say, pinch me.
Ooh. I mean, so much of this journey has been pinch me. Like I love what I do, but I make really conscious efforts to remind myself that it's not who I am. This is one facet of who I am. And I think it's like strange when you get into these kinds of roles at a really young age because people fawn over it in a way that I will never understand, but probably because I'm just in it because I genuinely love it. I'm not doing it for the title. I also just, I never cared about it in that way of wanting to like have a big role. To me, it always was like, I just need to be able to make the kind of work that I feel like I've been called to do.
Mhm.
And so that does always feel pinch me. Like to be able to tell stories and make things that I feel like are worthy of the words on the page is always a privilege. And that changes people's lives. And I think that even if it's something, style related, people may write it off. But a lot of times, the choices in which you make of how you get dressed or what you choose to wear, how you choose to present yourself is part of a story, right? But I love that also at the cut. I mean, so much of what we do is also about abortion rights and everything. We cover
Mhm.
everything. And so that always does feel pinch me, but no, it is not glamorous. I think that that's just
And
me.
then what are the things that you're like, okay, this is the unglamorous part that y'all really have no idea about, that you think that you're like, nah, I'll be happy when this season's over.
Um, I mean, probably my least favorite part is that, and you can relate to this, when you're running a business, there are certain things that you like want to be able to tell people and that you cannot because for the sake of business, you're just like, this is not the information that people need to know or understand. And a lot of times I want to be in defense of something or someone
Yeah.
and I cannot. And that really bothers me because I'm just so Midwestern in that way where I'm like, just don't think the worst. Like,
Yeah.
just like give me the benefit of a doubt a little bit. And it bothers, that does get to me a lot. And I think, yeah, like you give up a lot of your privacy in these roles. And I think a lot of people glamorize that of like, oh, you get to go to this thing and do this thing, etc. But you don't get to really do anything quietly anymore. And whether that's like succeed or fail, like people are
Mhm.
watching you and you have to be aware of that at all times, which I don't actually find enjoyable. So
I think that's interesting that you feel like you don't have the grace of privacy. I feel like you're relatively private. You don't have a TikTok. Not that
selectively.
TikTok is like the thing
Yeah.
of
No, no, no. You know what? I wanted to do one and then I was like, this is gonna, because I actually like I enjoy having fun with it. I would love to show people the behind the scenes. There's actually so many things that I think would actually be enjoyable to show people of the process of making a magazine. It's still so fascinating to me.
Mhm.
But I don't know. Sometimes I feel like the internet is a little too cynical for it, and I just wouldn't be able to handle that personally.
No, I feel it. I just went viral with the thing I said about Alex Cooper, like kind of defending
Ah,
her,
yeah.
and people went nuts, nuts. And I was like, the one time I defend a white woman, y'all want to be mad at
What?
me? Like, come on. Like,
Yeah, it's a bit. I started that video. I didn't finish it, but
I
I
mean,
agree.
it
Like,
wasn't
I
really that
agree.
profound. I just
Yeah,
was like, anyways, it's not the point. It's not about Alex Cooper. The point is, I think that, yeah, I mean, I do think that when you start to share more, then it just opens up for more dialogue on things that are just like, I'm not really looking for feedback. I'm just putting it out into the
totally,
world.
totally. And I like, I don't have a problem with being vulnerable or talking about anything in my personal life or anything like that. But I think that people then start to equate, like, we'll write a story about something, but that's
Mm,
not, it may not have anything to do with me. Like, that's just a story that I'm very interested in, but that doesn't mean it's my story.
yeah,
And, the cut is not lindsaypeoples.com. And so I think
right.
giving people that boundary sometimes, because a good example is like, I read the comments a lot of what people say online on our site and also the cut Instagram. And I can tell, if a person actually hasn't read the story and they're just reading
Mhm.
the headline and whatever, which I will leave that there. But, sometimes it bums me out because I'm like, if you just read the story, you
Like if
wouldn't
you
even
actually
have
just,
this
yeah, did the thing.
commentary. And sometimes I want to jump in and sometimes I do jump in because I will go there.
You
But
get you go in the comments
I
and
do.
respond.
Oh, yeah. 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 Because sometimes I feel like it's out of hand and it's just when we get to a point of disrespect,
You're
I'm not
like,
gonna
cut
tolerate
it
it. But
down. Does
yeah.
your team ever say like, "Hey, you gonna jump in these comments?" Or
No, because they know I will. I'm very quick to be like, everyone needs to lower their tone. This is not how we speak. Please don't.
I had a no
But
Twitter rule for a while at my company. I was like, do not
yeah.
respond to people on Twitter defending the company because you're just fueling the fire of the
Totally.
acquisition.
Yeah. And I think that really is what it is. Like, I will remind myself, like, okay, this is the Cuts Instagram or the Cuts voice. So, like, let me not jump in. Sometimes I will and, like, very respectfully. But yeah, if they come to my page, different voice for sure.
Oh yeah, you come over here.
Come over here. Nah, different.
Yes, exactly. No, I definitely agree with you that like sometimes being the boss means that I'm from St. Louis. I'm also very Midwestern. Like there's things that I want to just like yell and just be like, I'm rooting for you. Like
Literally.
I'm
Literally.
rooting for you so hard right now. But literally, as the CEO, this is unacceptable.
Yes.
You know?
Completely. And people forget this is a business. Like I say all the time, I'm like, this is not a nonprofit. This is a business. What are you doing?
No, literally, what are you doing? Like, I had one employee, they were on social, they were talking about how, like, they were like, we work remotely.
Yeah.
And they were talking about on their social about like all the things they do with their working remotely while they're supposed to be working. And in my head, I'm like, why would
No.
you post this? Like,
Yeah.
why would you post this?
This
Because
is an inside thought. Don't say
yeah,
this.
why would you post this? You know your manager. I'm not even your manager. I'm your manager's manager. Manager.
Right.
So
Yeah,
like,
but you know your manager's going to see it.
your manager is going to see this. And if you think they're not going to be like, oh, well, that person has more time, just at a bare minimum, oh, that person clearly has more time and can carry more work. Or like, oh, this person is sitting around on a yacht right now because
Yeah.
I can see them on the yacht, which I'm not even mad at. Work remotely on a yacht. That ain't my business.
That
If you
sounds
get the
great.
work,
I haven't done that before.
sounds ideal to me. We have the wrong job for
Yeah,
that.
invite me next time. Whoever this is, invite me.
Yeah. I'm like, go ahead, sis. But yeah, I think that people underestimate and to be fair, we have the position of power. So like why would they think about like
Totally.
our problems? It's like,
Totally.
oh, crying little bosses. And it's like, I mean, no, but a little,
A little. Yeah.
a little empathy
Some
over here.
things. Yeah.
You know, we had to do a reduction of force, and I had been warning people for months. I'm like, hey, this business is not performing. Hey, we're
Hmm.
overspending. Hey, we need to cut over here.
Yep.
Hey, we need to cut over here. For months, I shared numbers with them, so transparent. The day came, and people were shocked. I'm
Freaking
like,
out.
we're shocked.
Yeah. This
You're
always happens.
shocked.
This always happens though.
I'm like, you weren't secretly going to get another job. I was warning you. Like
No,
that's
I also think that there's so much going on that a lot of times it takes so much communication as managers, as leaders to really get people to understand what you're saying nowadays too. So
I don't think people want to understand. I think a lot of people don't want to think that much about society, the market, trends, AI, global warming. I
yeah.
actually think that people are trying to avoid because it is overwhelming. How do you guys manage that given what you do?
I mean, I think some of it can be overwhelming, but I also feel like people use that as an excuse to not engage, right? And like I think about this a lot of, I'm often so jealous of people who can just pass by the news. I've always felt, just as a Black woman, that like I have a certain level of responsibility to understand what is going on in the world and to engage in that way, but also in running a publication, you have to consume all of these things. You have to understand all of these things, right? Because we are, yes, writing about what is going on in the world. And then also in the process of creating our own news cycle, then so much of the cut is, my mandate when I started, I was like, I want the cut to be the thing that's in your group chat. I want it to be the thing
Mhm.
that you're sending to your girlfriends and saying, like, have you read this? We need to talk about this. This is so crazy. This is so funny. I never thought about it in this way. And I think a lot of that is so much of the timing, like getting that timing right. And I think a lot of times people just feel thrown off by the timing of so much coming at you. And so I do feel like a lot of it is getting everyone not only on the train, but on the same pace on the train is really what is difficult nowadays.
Yeah, I think so too. It's like we all need to be consuming this message at the same time so that we can have an impact. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, thank you. I would like to actually just watch TikToks about puppies today. Thank you for that.
I mean, same, but that's not my life. So
No, that's not our life at all. I was up watching everything about Hurricane Milton last night.
same.
It's just terrible, terrible. So you mentioned, and you just said this a couple minutes ago. You said, you're an open book, and you also said that you try to remember that the role that you have, the career that you have, the position that you have is not you, the person.
Mhm.
Has that always been the case for you?
No, I think that my faith has always been a really big part of a driving faith of just who I am, but also how I move. And I think that it has just changed a lot of the ways in which that I am trying to be a woman in the world. When I became editor in chief of Teen Vogue, I think I just turned 26, I believe. Honestly, I
Mhm.
don't remember at this point. And I felt very excited, but I just remember feeling like I just never thought I would get that job. I just never thought that I would become an editor in chief. I'd had a lot of conversations with people in my career, and to this day, even before I got this job, of saying, like, if I got into a leadership role, I'm not going to change, and letting people understand that, like, I'm not going to get into the meeting and people say something crazy and me not speak up. That's just not how I was raised. It's not the person that I am. And I would rather not have the opportunity. I'd rather people just understand really, like, who they are saying yes to, than think that, like, this is a great public move for us, but then behind the scenes, she's just going to do some different things. And so I feel like it was very hard for me when I was younger to understand that, like, I have to put my feet to the fire on certain things that I feel very strongly about, but also that, like, I have to preserve my energy to make the work that I'm really called to do. And a lot of that has been, like, really, I've retired from people pleasing officially.
Amen.
Done. Shout out to the people that, benefited from that, but it's over. And
That's a tough one to break, man.
yeah,
Was
and
it
I
people pleasing or was it like conflict avoiding? Was it truly people pleasing?
truly people pleasing. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't mind conflict. That's like whatever, because I feel like I'm very empathetic. I want to hear both sides of what people have to say. I always have a conviction and discernment of what I really want to do, but I'm always open to whatever people want to say, and open to the fact that I may be wrong. I'm never that person that is so sure of my rightness. I'm just sure of, like, the conviction of, here's the motivation and what I want to do and the intention of where I'm trying to get things going, at least. But I think that I muddled a lot of the identity of who I am with role, and just also these jobs are, when I say, like, you consume the news and all of that, it's also just consuming in your mind, because you're constantly thinking about everything being a story. Like, a regular dinner conversation is someone asking, like, what you're watching on television. For me, it's like, I've watched every Oscar nom thing a couple months ago, but I'm watching it for work. I'm not really watching it for my own personal enjoyment, right? And so a lot of the things that I do for fun, I have to, like, plan it, schedule it. I have to put it down, because I'm like, these are things that I wouldn't naturally do. I'm
Right.
making time for them, but also they're things to turn my brain off. They're not things that everybody else is just doing for fun, kind of thing. But I also feel like, these industries are very fickle. And so a lot of the separation for me has been that, like, the talents and gifts that I have been given are mine, and they are not because of a role. Or, yes, I'm grateful for doors being open and all of that, but they are mine whether I'm in this job or not. And that is something that I had to really get in me.
Yeah. I'm similar in a lot of ways. I started Blavity when I was 24, and we were pretty successful pretty early on, and it wasn't without its own trials and tribulations. But at one point, I was the business. The business was me. Like, you could walk down the street and be like, "Hey, Blavity," and, like, I would turn around.
Yeah.
Like, that was my identity. That was who I was. And the decoupling of, like, my career and my business with me the person was very hard and very confusing for a lot of people. Like, I remember when, like, I started posting on Instagram and, like, sharing my story more, people were like, "Oh my god, Blavity must be going under," and I'm like, no, like, I am just a person who is also CEO and founder.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's hard for people to understand the difference a lot of times, but I also just think, like, you can be going through things or want to process things, and you want to go through it and then be able to share it later, and people not understand, like, I just don't want to do this, like, right as I'm going through it on the internet, but, like, at the same time, happy to chat with people about it. Like, it is hard. I don't think that people often understand, especially I feel like with overachievers, which
Yeah,
we both are,
totally.
like, this I could do nonstop.
Yeah.
Personal life stuff takes me so much longer.
Yeah, someone I had a baby, and, like, weeks later, like, literally only weeks later, people were like, "So what's your advice for new moms?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, I just got here."
Yeah, it hits very differently. So, like, this, even though I was very scared and all of that at a young age, I was very, like, I just hit the ground running. But then, yeah, like, I look back on, I got married at a young age, and then, right, like, I think a year into this job, I had filed for divorce, and I
Right.
was like, I should have done that sooner. Like, there were many personal life things that it took me much longer to develop. Whereas I feel like career wise, I was so much quicker in understanding the work that I want to do. And
Right.
so now I feel like I'm just in a different place where both are aligning at the same time.
Totally. Are you
Yeah.
single?
I am.
How's single life treating you?
Um, I like how is single like treating any Black woman.
I mean, I don't know. I've lived vicariously through everyone right now, but I feel like people are going on dates and getting wined and dined and meeting new people. Are you having fun?
I'm having fun because I'm not like, yeah, I'm like, whatever God has for me, has for me. Like, I'm not pressed about it. I think, you know, I've seen you talk about this a ton. When you're in these kinds of roles and you have so much on you, like the desire for partnership, I think is just in a different place where
Yes.
you're not like, yes, you can be looking for fun, but you're looking for the right kind of partnership. And so I'm very much like, if it's not the right thing, I don't need to be bothered.
Yeah, dating, and let me be explicit about this for anybody who's like, what are we talking about? When I was dating for fun, it's very different than dating to find my person.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And in my 20s, I was like, I'm dating for fun. You know, I'm dating for interest. Like, I met so many incredible men. I learned so much from the men that I was
Exactly.
dating. We experienced new things together. Like, that was a beautiful moment of growth for me because I also found things that I'm like, I would have never known that I liked men
Yeah.
rubbing my feet until I had a man who rubbed my feet. Like, you know, like there's just like random things that you just don't experience unless
Yeah.
you, personally, for me, date a bunch of different people, particularly because I'm from St. Louis. Like, you know, I wasn't getting all types of diversity in St. Louis when it comes to just school of thought. I only ever dated Black men. And that's one thing I never went out of. But I was open to it. I just never knew when they
Yeah.
were sending me love signals. I just couldn't, I'm like, oh, do you think I'm attractive? I don't know. I literally could not figure it out. So I was just like, never mind. I'm gonna stick with my
I
boys.
don't think I figured it out either, to be honest with you. I don't think I have, but I feel like very like I'm in the right place at the right time
Yeah.
and that everything that has fallen away was purposeful 100%. Yeah.
Totally. I
Yeah.
completely agree with similarly. But like when I decided to switch and date for, oh, I want to find my person, like I'm ready for my next phase of life and I want to experience life with someone else. And I've
Yeah, it's a good
accomplished
thing.
so much. Like it's no fun to be in the Four Seasons alone. Like it's no fun to be south of France by yourself. Like no, I'm good. You know, I did that, you know, and I wanted to have somebody else that I could share my life with. That is a very different set of
Yeah,
criteria and also required a different version of me, you know? So,
totally.
yeah, single life era, Lindsay. So, are you looking or are you more of like just kicking it?
I mean, I don't think I'm looking because I think the right thing will find me. Like I'm open. That would be the way that I would put it.
Okay, I feel
Yeah.
that. I feel that. What advice would you give to ambitious women who are perhaps have outgrown their current situation and are thinking through like their next phase of life? Because I also feel like there's a lot of women who are there where they also maybe got married young and things have changed.
I think so much of my perspective now is that like I really thought that I could do everything on my own, and I feel like part of that messaging was just very the girl boss energy of like you can do it, you can do everything, you can do
Yeah.
all the things. And I understand that I'm capable and more than capable, but that doesn't mean that I should have to do everything on my own, and that doesn't mean that I should have to take everything on my own.
Mhm.
And so I think a lot of my thinking used to be that, like, I'm here to help and support. And that is, my role and in helping other Black women in the industry and in helping in the stories that I tell and helping my partner and helping this man and helping whatever. And I'll never forget one of my best friends. She said to me, she was like, I just don't think that you've experienced someone who delights in the joy of who you are and just being this amazing person, but also someone who in a life where people are actually invested in supporting you because you've always been the person supporting other people. And I think that a lot of times when you want to make a change, like that really is the tension where you're like, okay, but like I can do this and I can do this. And actually kind of falling back and being like, but I need to let other people help me. I need to be in situations that are actually reciprocal and loving and intentional and also helping me because you're not always going to be able to fire on all the cylinders. You're not always going to be like
And
all
even
of
if
these
you're
things can't be
able, you don't want to.
exactly. Exactly. I do not want to.
Right.
And I realize that. And so I think when you hit that tension, just understanding that, like, yes, that may mean that things shift and change. And that may mean that, like, a person that you were really close friends with may not want to be friends with you anymore.
Yeah.
That may mean it, like, your life may shift. That may mean that you're in a role that's like too demanding, but ultimately, I don't know, like I want so badly for Black women for us to be in really sustainable but joyful and fulfilling and meaningful livelihoods, and it not always be the struggle narrative.
I completely agree. Like, I recently wrote a book, it's coming out next spring, and it's called Rewrite Your Rules.
Mm,
Because what I had to do was basically look and say, like, what were all the things that I was told or I believed because of, growing up how I grew up, or, I went to a Catholic all girls school for high school. Like, I was a very high achiever. And at one point, it was like, I've checked all the boxes. I've done all the things that were expected of me. I've exceeded everybody's expectations. But like, why though?
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
like there's no like pat on the back. There was no golden star at the end of it. Like what was
yeah,
left was still me having to wake up every morning and do the things. And I
yeah,
did not like that waking up in the morning and doing those things anymore. And so I really had to start to like rewrite how I was defining success. And
yeah.
I think for so much of my life, success was defined by being a high achiever and being very successful from a
Mhm.
career, school, student body president, like all of the things. When now I'm like, nah, success is like, feed my son dinner every night.
Yeah,
Success is like, I went to Pilates 2 times this week. I made it. Like,
correct, correct.
like employees that I like and I pay on time every 2 weeks with a direct deposit. Like
Exactly.
that's success. So yeah, I think for a Black woman, I just hope that we can all like change our own rules that we are defining.
I love that.
What are some rules that you've rewritten for yourself?
I don't know specific rules, but I think that I realize that I have been convinced about things that I believe to be steadfast and true that were just for a time being. It's been really nice to surrender a lot of those things. And it's been really freeing to let go of some of those things. Life is short, but can feel very long at the same time. And so a lot of times when you're in something or going through things, it can feel like this is just going to last forever. Is this going to be my life forever? Like what, like, where is this going? And I feel like I have lived so much life in the past, I would say like 7 years has been
Mhm.
like the craziest, probably 7 years I've had, and just like transitioning in so many ways. But I also feel like part of that has been that I had in my mind that there was a limit to how high or how far I was going to
Mm,
go.
mm,
And not because I mean, I think I had some lack of, some insecurities and some of those things, but just in thinking that there was really no blueprint for me. Like there are obviously a ton of Black people in media and fashion, but there's not a ton of Black women. There's a lot of Black men, which is a very different experience, and they will tell you that firsthand. There's not a lot of Black women. And then also, I think in the kind of work that I've always been interested in making, there just wasn't a lot of role models. I'm also super family oriented. I'm also just very chill. I have to go to these things for work, etc. But like
right.
this weekend, I will be knitting. I will be reading my
I love
Kindle. Swear
that.
to God, those are my grand plans.
Yes.
And I don't care to like pretend or to be anything for anybody else. And I think a lot of the times when I had these rules set for myself, it was that like, oh, you have to do it like this person, or
Mhm.
this person only went this far. And realizing that like I am my own blueprint. Like I gotta find my own way, and kind of rewriting that has been interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for, what you do next. There's been certainly a blueprint for editors and chiefs turning into personal brands and, going the
Yeah.
different route. And I'm excited to see the route that you create for yourself. And like, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of women that look at that and say, oh man, thank God somebody else did something else with this because it just creates more freedom for people. So
Yeah.
not that that's your responsibility, but it is something that is an outcome of you following your own passions and your own journey. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for you and I'm so happy we met. There's a giant plane flying over. So if you guys can hear that,
I hear it a
actually
little.
it was a helicopter. But thank you, Lindsay, for joining today. And I
Right.
really am just like so thrilled at how you've been able to like build the cut into this next phase. And I'm just really excited to see what you do next.
Thank you. I so appreciate it. This is so much fun.
So fun, easy peasy. All right, y'all. Make sure you're subscribing to YouTube. My monthly vlog comes out soon. Two, make sure you guys are actually subscribing to the podcast. You're driving me nuts. I can see the data that you are downloading and not subscribing. And just, why are you doing this to you,
Yeah.
girl?
Subscribe.
just subscribe.
Help us out.
Thank you. Have a great week. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Journey podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review and head to our Instagram and YouTube to leave a comment. I look forward to hearing how this podcast has made an impact on your own journey.